Dagda Yev agus tá Fulcherov is mission on Skelly Biog. Hello, and you're very welcome. I am the little storyteller, and this is Live at Five. Today, we've had an amazing session about how people found their way here, how they managed to find their way into Live at Five to become part of our community. And as ever with anything, we always try and make space to highlight new voices because it can happen from time to time when communities become more established. You get these people who are more comfortable, and you get the regular kind of conversational circumstance starters or participants. So sometimes we want to make sure that we make space if anyone feels that they want to raise new voices, to highlight, especially for people here who've been here from the beginning. It's an energy jolt to me to know that we're still reaching more people. We're still bringing people into our community, and it's an absolute joy. So that was our session today, and that would have been the end of our session with a summary, except someone has placed a kesht against the Dagda Bard, which is a question. The Irish for question is kesht, and given that I'm a bard, I'm going to do my best to answer this. So, Alan, what is your kesht? What is your question?
So, John, just to help people out, what is the best way to tell between fetishizing Ireland and actually having a call from Ireland?
Okay. It is a really, really good question. And it's not an easy one answered. As with all of these things that tends to happen from time to time, really, really great questions pop up, and it's not something you can just turn around and give an easy answer to. There is no easy answer. But Ireland, I'm going to be very careful of acknowledging my own biases. I am biased about when it comes to Ireland. I am Irish. I am born of this country. I have grown every day of my life here in this land, and I absolutely love it. I am in love with Ireland. And I will be very clear about that position at the very outset of this. Now, it led to some interesting experiences for me, though, when I traveled outside of Ireland, and I would mention that I was Irish. I got, some weird reactions. Some people were like, "Oh yeah, you're from Irish," with their derogatory, dismissive, "oh fiddly-dee, plastic paddy leprechauns" and stuff, and that made me angry. And then other people were like, "Oh yeah, yeah, you're just that place on the edge of Europe, so you're pretty much just Europe, right?" I was like, which also made me angry. I was like, "No, this is my nation. We have our own national identity." And then the most confusing one of all, which I didn't know if I was allowed to be angry about, was people saying that they're Irish, but not being from Ireland. I was like, "Oh yeah, where were you born in Ireland?" I wasn't. My great granddad was. And I was like, "Okay, so you're Irish American," which is a beautiful thing in its right, But it began to raise awareness in me that there was this gra, which is Irish word for love, for Ireland, which comes as a response or a symptom of the diaspora, the mass immigration that happened out of Ireland during the 1840s to 1850 famine. So all of these people were forced to flee a place that they absolutely loved, but then held on to the passion and the love and then passed that on down the generations. And I didn't understand it. I really couldn't understand it. And I began to begrudge people. How can you claim to be something you're not? And it took me a while to get around that. And it was actually in a conversation. I was sitting having dinner with a friend of Laura's who hosted us when we were over in the States. And I was sitting beside a guy, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm Irish." I'm like, okay, in the broadest American accent. Like, back in my brain, I'm like, oh, here we go. Front of my brain, I'm like, well, be polite, because mommy raised me to be polite. And he's like, yeah. My mom was from Offaly, and I have this photograph of her dancing with her dad. And it's this lovely black and white photograph. And he then speaks so passionately about it. Like, his passion was real. His emotion was real. I would never in any way denigrate the man for that, because it was real to him. But I began to realize what was real to him was the photo of the mom when she was a little girl in the guna with the bows in her hair, dancing with her dad, who was in the tweed jacket and the flat cap. And, that's what he loved. That, to him, Ireland was that. Ireland was this photograph of emotion and passion that he was raised with. And that gave me insight, that gave me perspective, you know, and I was able to understand the disconnect, because a photograph is a moment in time. It is captured, it is static, it does not change. Ireland is a country, it is a nation, and it carries on and is constantly changing and is constantly growing. You know, there's almost a break in reality where people have this, oh, well, yeah, Ireland is a rural place. Ireland is a information technology place. You know, Ireland's chief export isn't agriculture anymore. It's knowledge. You know, we are an information technology hub. You know, you have an English speaking workforce who are highly educated. You know, that is what Ireland is. And so I was able to kind of begin to understand, you know, and that allowed me to find my compassion, which I'm very, very grateful to the man for, because I was then able to have a conversation, climb over myself and have an honest conversation saying, listen, you're Irish American, and it's important that you embrace that, because your ancestors survived a fuck ton of shit. And so if you just claim to be Irish, you're erasing what they made it through to be where you are. And that was the first time it landed for him. By him claiming Ireland and this love, and that Ireland is this emerald jewel, like this amazing kind of like fantasy land of fairy. By him fetishizing it, almost is the word that was used, but I don't like to use fetishizing because it does involve a sexual connotation to a certain degree. But by him fantasizing, by him kind of pushing all of his belief and energy into this Ireland, this kind of fictitious Ireland, because it doesn't exist anymore beyond the photograph, he was almost erasing his more recent history. By him reaching back to hold on to ancient history or older history, he was missing, you know, what his mom had fucking survived, traveling over on coffin ships, going through like customs into America, going through places where the sign said no black, no dogs, no Irish, finding her place, establishing her place, surviving, and then bringing forward new generations in that. Now, of course, her trauma, having survived it, is like that she is Irish. She wants to just remember the glory and the love of home, which is the green lands and all that rain we talked about. But if that's what's passed on down the generation, time and again, then what is handed on is a photograph. It is a partial image. It is a broken kind of moment that people get stuck on. So, what I would say for anyone who wants to try to be aware of this and be sensitive to this is to look at Ireland now. Take the time, as much as I say 100%, go back into the lore. Know the ancient Irish lore. I'm doing that now. I'm going to be 39 in a few days. Right? I'm on the cusp of 40, but it's only now in the last few years that I'm actually embracing my own Irish lore, that I'm actually studying this to understand the ancientness of the landscape that I lived on. But I'm still aware that my world, my Ireland, is struggling to carry on with its heart and its soul, fighting for marriage equality, repealing like the Eighth Amendment to our Constitution, which was very, very bad for people who had wombs. The right to self-identify that we talk about at the start of all of these sessions was only put in Irish legislation within the last, I think, 5 years, where people can now file legal documentation, officially change their pronouns, officially change their name to be recognized, to be accepted. This is Ireland now. And so, love your photograph. Yes. Remember and embrace that passion, that emotion. Yes. But do yourself the gift of looking at Ireland now, because that way you'll be very clear as to what you're actually in love with. You know, is it just the idea of Ireland? And that's okay. Like all of us need a fantasy, an escape, a hope, a dream. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is a difference between a dream and a reality. And so if you want to make sure that you're honestly stepping over to loving Ireland as it is, then you need to be aware of the reality. Now, I'm not saying Ireland is perfect. You know, we too have racism, because where the fuck doesn't? You know, we too have had an outcropping of fucking fascism, and I am this close to taking the club and the shield, and you will not see me because I will cover my face. But this is how it is. This is our world. And so if you want to answer that question for yourself, you need to be looking beyond what has been handed to you into what it is the world today. So I really hope that this has answered the question. And wherever you are watching this video, Gaurav Mahagat, thank you very much. Agus slán go fóill. Goodbye.